Hiya, it's first thing in the morning. I've just popped downstairs, um, just try and give myself some space. Everyone else is sleeping. I wanted to just do a quick video on self-care. Thing I was talking about yesterday. I struggled yesterday, and I think what I struggled with yesterday was the kind of lack of care I could give to myself. So normally on a Saturday I we have a bit of morning to chill out, then I make the spaghetti bolognaise, then the kiddies I get the kiddies ready, then I drop the kiddies off to my mum and dad's, then I go off in the car to go and give my partner a break, and then I drive back and go and sit and have a cup of tea with my mum and dad, and then bring the kiddies back, and then we have our evening meal, and then we sort of I generally have a little bit more of a tidy up on the Saturday, not too much, and then we try and get to bed relatively early after the shopping's arrived, so not too much. Now I think what happened yesterday is there was a bit of my brain waiting for that little bit of time off that I get, which is driving in the car and going to give my partner his break time, which also kind of gives me a break time. And I think because that wasn't there was a bit of my brain that just didn't know how to cope. And I think I realise, which I do often realise, is that I'm living this life which is working reasonably well, but it's only working reasonably well because of all these things that I put in place, and all of these things that I've worked on to try and make sure that they happen so that I can function well. So that's where the self-care comes in. So what I worked out from when I was feeling very low after the birth of my second child, I was feeling pretty low after the birth of my first child, but I think that was just tiredness in terms of having a small child. But the second child, kind of, I felt that it was much worse, and not just tired. It was a lot worse, and I think I figured out that I could give myself tools to cope. I wrote them all down. Well, I didn't say I wrote them all down. There was only about a few bits, but it was things like brush your teeth every day. And I know these sound simple, but I struggled doing that. I struggled having any sense of worth and any sense of there's no point, in the classic way. So I made a promise to myself to do these things. It was showering every day. Obviously, again, when you've got a small baby, you have to kind of organise to be able to shower. In terms of, I think I used to put the bouncer upstairs so he could sit in the bouncer, so I could have a quick shower. And obviously sometimes he wouldn't be very happy about that, so to sort of make sure he was fed first. And I know you can have a shower while they're screaming and crying, but it's not not very relaxing, so you sort of feel worse than if you not had a shower in the first place. So it's easier, nicer to have a shower while they're relatively happy, even if it's just for a few minutes. And I think as they got older, they would fight with each other, so I'd have to make sure they were relatively happy, which is when I started to have a bath. If it was just me by myself there, I would have a bath so I could hear them if they were getting into trouble with each other or endangering themselves. Excuse me. So yeah, I would brush my teeth, I'd have a shower, I'd wash myself. And also I read a lot about the Fly Lady, and she talking about cleaning a house in little segments, because at the time I was at home a lot more, because although we took over the shop when my son was 1.5, and I didn't work there obviously a lot because he wasn't in a lot of childcare, so I was at home a lot, and so because I was home a lot, I felt the pressure to be the one that would tidy up everything all the time. I was obviously quite overweight at that point, and I used to get a lot of backaches, and I used to not be able to bend down very easily, and I certainly wouldn't be able to do what I can do now, which is just stand up and then crouch right down without using my hands and stand right back up again. I couldn't do that, so it was quite a bit more tricky to do everything around the house. I would obviously get tired more because I was still eating sugar and still binge eating and such, so it was harder. So I used to have to really try hard to figure out how I was going to clean everything. And so what she recommended was that I, she would say, split it up into little tiny pieces, 10 minutes at a time, 5 minutes break, and she'd say about kind of choosing one section first and doing that, and all those types of techniques. But one of the other things she said was that when you get up in the morning, you dress, and when you dress right down to your shoes. So you put so that's what I do now. In the mornings, especially when I go to work, I have a shower, I brush my teeth, and I dress right up until my shoes. I put my shoes on way before my breakfast and things like that, and then obviously then the next thing I do is put my apron on so I can deal with the kiddies' breakfast and such without getting my clothes dirty. That's something I struggle with on the Saturday and Sunday because I feel so rebellious. I'm like, oh, do I really have to do everything all the time? I don't want to do everything all the time. So I think that's the one push I'm going to try and do now, is that on a Saturday and a Sunday, I wake up and the first thing I do is shower and dress. Not because I'm about to do everything in the whole world, but just because it will give me a better sense of self-care. And so what's the other things? And the other thing is eating well. So it's making sure that I feed myself the same as I would feed others, and do everything for myself as I would do for others. I don't have to be extra special, but I have to at least have got to the same stage as those people. So for example, if I'm getting my kids a drink, I need to be getting myself a drink. If I've made my children a meal, I need to make myself a meal, and I need to give myself time to eat. I tend to do now the bit where my meals are. I tend to eat my breakfast at work because it's quiet and it's calm, and I haven't got nobody trying to claw at me or needing anything, so it's quite a nice thing to do. I eat my lunch at work. We've got a lunch hour, so we shut the shop from 1:30 till 2:30, and that gives us opportunity to get anything done that we haven't quite managed to without disruption from customers, but also gives us the ability to sit down and eat the food. I've done very well in the fact that I now don't eat crisps and chocolate after I pick the kids up. It used to be within my sins, obviously, but it was a habit that was hard to break, and I don't tend to eat anything now. I pick the kids up and they might have a snack, but I don't tend to have a snack, and then I just get back and I'll have a piece of fruit when I get home, and the hot drink, and then off, and carry on making tea. So it's a lot easier now. And then I have an evening meal after the kids have gone to bed. So the kids go to sleep, up to bed, and they're sort of in their beds by 7:30, which means that then I put the washing in by 8 o'clock. Just try and make sure I push to make sure I do, so that then it's only got an hour, and I tend to have my evening meal in that gap. So it tends to do from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. It's my evening meal. So that's the self-care there, to make sure that I feed myself properly. I now obviously make myself proper meals. So I mean, Slimming World helps with that, obviously, because it makes sure that I make sure I'm eating healthy foods, and making sure that I'm not hurting myself by eating lots and lots of sugary things and lots of binge foods, which makes me tummy sore, makes my mouth sore, and makes my head not in the right place. It makes me uncomfortable and scared and depressed and all those types of things. So I'm helping myself out like that. I also used to provide my self-care by making sure I could get up a little bit earlier than everybody else to give myself time during the day. Nowadays, obviously, I'm getting more time to myself because, well, not necessarily more time to myself, but more time with other adults rather than just with children all the time. So, but previously, I would wake up half an hour before everybody else would wake up to give myself a bit of time during the day, so that I could then continue on with the rest of the day, safe in the knowledge that I knew that I'd had a little bit of time to myself already. Nowadays, once a week I get some time to myself, and that's on the Monday morning. So I drop the kids off to school, and I take my bicycle with me. So once we've walked up to school, then I cycle up to the town. It's not very far. It's a very short bicycle ride. It's only 5 minutes, so it's not really a very huge one. But for me, it feels incredibly freeing. To be able to cycle by myself is an incredible freedom. I cycle up to the library, drop some books in. It's not open till 9:30, so I only just drop the books in. Then I often go to Lidl's and just pop up on sort of fruit and nuts, because the healthy food there is pretty cheap. And then I go to Slimming World and sometimes help them out, setting up and all that sort of stuff, because I'm here quite early. I feel a bit guilty, but it doesn't properly open till 10, but I'm always there about 9:15. So I try and make sure I help them set the tables up and things like that, and I have a little chat, obviously, and kind of get weighed in and things like that. And then so it feels quite indulgent to me to kind of have that bit of time. And then I often pop to the library, just get a book if I need a book, or get some books for the children, just because I quite like input. For me, that's quite a big self-care, is getting some input in. I don't think I get bored, but I sort of get stagnant. I need something else in, otherwise I've just got my own thoughts going round and round and round, and sometimes they're not very helpful to me. So I need extra input in that pushes me out of my negative thought patterns. So, and then about at that point, it's usually around 10 o'clock. Unfortunately, I don't stay to group anymore. But the group, it's almost the first bit is the most useful to me. The lady's really nice who does it, but she doesn't really go into any depth. And so when I do stay to group, not that I've got a tremendous problem with it, but when all the way through my Slimming World journey, whenever she comes round to me, she never sort of asked how I was getting on or anything like that. She just said, "What would you like to lose next week?" And I'd say what I'd like to lose next week, and unless I then purposefully said something myself, she would just move on. So there was never any, I had to sort of butt in to be able to communicate how I felt, and I never really felt like I could really do what I do here on the Slimming World on this YouTube channel, which is to express actually how I feel about things. And I know I have a lot of thoughts, so it would take about 2 hours to express about actually what was going on in my head. So I understand probably why it's probably not a good idea to me to talk in a Slimming World group, but I found that it was frustrating. I didn't really feel like I got a lot from it, apart from chatting to the people in their first bit. So unfortunately I don't stay, but what I do instead is I cycle home, and at 10:30 me and my partner go out for a run, and we go for a run. It's just under 5 kilometres, and I don't run all the way, but I just go bits and pieces, and my aim is to be able to run all the way eventually, and it's getting easier. And then we get back by about 11:15 thereabouts, and then we start cooking our cooked breakfast, which is a very nice meal that we can sit together and have. And usually that's eaten by about 1:30, and we used to just sit down and have a bit more of some telly for an hour before I then went to go and get the kids. But now we're going to do a household budget each time. We're going to take a minute out just to make sure, because obviously the shop takes up a lot of our time, and sometimes the house gets neglected in terms of financial parts. So we're going to take that hour every Monday now just to sort out our financial parts to the shop, to the house, because although we're kind of relatively okay, sometimes these things slip, don't they? And then you kind of like, oh, there's a big bill come up I didn't realise. So nowadays I try and make sure I give myself a bit more time. I could probably try and push for having a bit more time to myself, and that's one of the things I struggle with, is especially yesterday. The reason why I ate was because I didn't believe I could have any time to myself. So I tried to really purposefully to sit down in the afternoon and have half an hour off, just sat next to the kiddies. They were watching some telly, and I just did some knitting. Just try to, I think because I'm so far away from the baby part of my life, I sort of forget that I need time to myself, because obviously doing the shop and stuff, I'm always out with adult company. But I think I still need to really push to have a bit of time, because I'm so scared to relinquish. I'm so scared to do anything for myself anymore. That means that I just don't do it. I really feel like it's a huge waste of time, and that I really should be doing, if I've got any time, I should be doing something that is more productive, you know, either making some dinner or tidying up, or, you know, cleaning out something, or, you know. So I have this big negative voice in my head that tells me that I'm not. That is a big waste of time if I'm just sitting down and doing something I enjoy. So I have to really push against that, because I know that's not the case. I know that the more I look after myself and the more I spend some time for myself, then the better person I can be, and the more happy and the more productive I can be. I know that. So we sat and did some snowflakes, you know, the ones where you fold a piece of paper around and you cut them. We sat and did some of those. The kiddies were doing their gardens, and you know, we just had a bit of fun. And then I was with me for about half an hour or so, because then at that point I got to stand up and go and get some spaghetti bolognese made ready for the evening meal. I'm thinking about the spaghetti bolognese I had, because I had cheese in it last night. I just never ever have cheese in it. I never have cheese. I'd sort of not had cheese in it for so long, because obviously I used to use my healthy extra for other things. And also I don't particularly want to eat cheese anymore, because I was trying to sort of push myself more towards being vegan, really, just because I think I feel more comfortable there. So I don't know what happened to me yesterday, why I decided to have cheese on it. Most like, I think it's because everybody else is having cheese. It's like I don't want to feel left out, but I don't really want the cheese really overly. But so yeah, I'm trying to be a bit better at giving myself a bit more time, and kind of helping myself come away from those negative thoughts that I give myself. I usually use YouTube and my headphones to block out my negative thoughts, and I think one of the big things that happens is sometimes, you know, my son wants to watch his YouTube Kids, and his sister is watching YouTube Kids on her little tablet, and so sometimes I give him my phone to watch YouTube Kids on, and and he's asking for it, and I'm like, well, kind of, I just want to watch YouTube on mine so I can do the washing up and such. But there's like a bit of me goes, well, I am a big girl, I'm sure I can survive without it. You can have some YouTube Kids and I'll just wash up and things. But it's very hard, because then I have to do, I know, first world problems, but it's hard because I kind of do washing up, but then with my own thoughts in my own head again that aren't particularly positive. So I know full well that one of the big self-care things I can do for me is to change my voice in my head. Most of the time it's alright, most of the time it's positive, most of the time it can tell me I can do things. But surrounding housework, it's a tremendously negative person. It tells me that why should you be doing this? Why are you doing it all by yourself? That's my alarm. Tells me it's breakfast time. I have an alarm on a Sunday morning that tells me it's breakfast time, just to kind of give me a bit of kind of structure, because I do struggle, considering I bucked against having a routine for most of my life. Now I'm in a routine, I really struggle being out of it. So try and give myself even a bit of routine on a Sunday, so I kind of know where I am, and saves me getting groggy. I can't remember what I was saying about. Okay, anyway, so yeah, so I feel like one of the big pushes I've got to make for myself is to reintroduce lots of these self-care situations. I realise that I am on my life that I lead, and the brain patterns that I have are only just dealt with the way whether I operate today. So the things I do to help myself function, having alarms on to tell me when to do stuff, making sure I've got hot meals during the day, making sure I'm exercising, making sure that I am kind of, I've organised my time so that my jobs are done when they need to be done. All of these types of things are only just keeping me together. And if I start to think, oh no, everything's working pretty well, I don't have to do these things, that's when the trouble lies, because I'm kind of got myself into a false sense of security where I think everything's functioning perfectly well, but what I don't realise is that it's functioning perfectly well because of all the things I'm doing. So I have to make sure that I do all of those things, and I have to be pushed. And it's also, the other thing as well is putting my pajamas on at night time. So I struggle taking my clothes off at night time. I struggle feeling safe at night time, and I don't know whether it links to that bit where I used to feel like I was going to die every time I go to sleep. So it's almost like if I don't prepare to go to sleep, like if I don't do the bedtime routine, maybe I won't die or something like that. I don't know. But it comes from that, where I'm just so reluctant to put my pajamas on. I mean, for a long time I didn't have any pajamas, and I made a conscious decision when my son was about, I think he must have been about 2 or so. I was like, right, I'm actually going to get some actual pajamas, and I was quite good and actually put my pajamas on. But recently I can't. I just don't want to put my pajamas on at all. I tend to go to sleep in the clothes that I wore during the day, just take my shoes off, and then I obviously then take those off, get dressed, get showered, and then dressed for the next day. And I don't know what it is, but I do know it's a sign of me feeling unhappy. It's a sign. So when I put my pajamas, when I'm calm enough and happy enough in my life, I know then I can put my pajamas on. So it's a sign. So I know full well that right now I'm not overly happy and not overly, I just don't feel very safe in my environment. I know it's also as well, you know how having your clothes on at night time helps me know that I can get up at a moment's notice and deal with anything. So The reason why I used to go to sleep with my clothes on was because obviously the kids would be up at some point, and obviously when I was feeding them, then they'd need to be fed, or they'd need to be changed, or they would, they've had a nightmare, or they would be being sick, or lots of these things you have to be fully dressed and ready to go. I think in those days, if I had slept with my shoes on, I would have done, like in an emergency situation. So I think also putting my pajamas on makes me feel incredibly vulnerable, because I'm so not ready to hop in the car to the hospital, or I feel like if I'm fully dressed, I feel so much safer. So I'm trying to work towards being able to put my pajamas on again. I mean, the men pajamas they're still very functional pajamas, so I've got, they're sort of fully clothed pajamas, so there's no reason why I chose them specifically so that I could function in them. I can do everything I need to do. I certainly won't be able to drive to the hospital in them, but I wonder if it might be worth me just trying to address that a little bit more, so that I can feel more comfortable and normal, instead of feeling like I'm always on kind of on the back foot and ready for an emergency at a moment's notice. My stress levels are obviously relatively high, and I know that as well, because I'm struggling relinquishing. So I'm struggling, when I struggle to give myself time out, it's because I'm kind of really tight, and I feel really like I need to keep everything in control, otherwise it'll all fall apart. And I'm struggling kind of relinquishing my my tightness. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at the moment. I think I've got to push harder for more self-care. I've got to push harder to get changed into my pajamas, so that no, that's not right. I don't want to push harder to get changed in my pajamas. I need to push harder on all the other things, so I naturally want to put my pajamas on, because that's usually a sign that I'm feeling comfortable and safe enough. So, and in turn that will help me deal better with stress of change, and deal better with stress of things being different, which is also change. Because my mum and dad said that they might now on a Saturday come and visit me and look after the kids here, and I think just that fact of that changing would be like really hard, because they often want to tidy up all the stuff of my house, and I really find that really hard, because there's a giant voice of me that says you should have tidied it up already, and now they're tidying it up. That's the really hard bit. It makes you feel like you failed. And I know it's not really the case, because of course I can't tidy up every single thing. I'm not at home every day, so I can't do all of it. There's no way I can do all of it. Not with two little kiddies kind of making it messy as you're tidying up in the first place. There's no way I could do it all by myself. I mean, even the kiddies have got to tidy up after themselves. I can't tidy everything. So I've got to be good and accept the help. But it still makes you it makes me nervous for the change, and the kind of the bit where people can see that maybe you're not coping well, maybe you're struggling, and I don't really like the bit where someone sees that I'm not coping well. So yeah, I think that's covered kind of what I wanted to say about self-care, and what my situation is, how far I've come with looking after myself, and kind of what I need to do next. One of the main things I've got to do is just take a bit more time for myself, so that I've got some time by myself every day, because talking about it, I realise I have one day, like sort of about and about an hour, just over an hour of time that is mine once a week. So I think I probably need to put a bit more time in. That's mine. It's not a lot of time, is it, to have by yourself? Actually, that's not true, because I have, in the mornings when I get to work, it's 9 o'clock, and I tend to sit for half an hour by myself in the shop, and the shop isn't open, so there's half an hour of time that I do have by myself every day. So there is a little bit of time there, but it's not quite the same as a Monday, because you've got freedom. I'm there. Obviously, I can pop into the town if I want to, go and get some bits and pieces done, but it's always jobs, and I feel like trying to find myself something, and the pressure of, obviously I was also got that that kind of course to do, which I tended to try and fit in that sort of 9 till 9:30 slot, which would be a good idea to do it in that bit. So it's trying to find another point during the day that I can just take for myself, whether it's just taking a walk out at the end of the day, just take some time to myself. But I think that might be one of the cruxes there, just to try and pull back myself a little bit, instead of giving it all out the time, because I've got to look after myself so that I don't emotionally eat. Okay, I think that's about 300 hours worth of talking, so I'm going to pause it there, and I'm going to piece this together, and I will upload. Sorry for all the intense amount of rambling, and I hope it's been of any use to anybody, and I would be eternally grateful if you've got any experiences about self-care and issues surrounding self-care, and things that you do now that help you function in your life, or things that you've always done that really help you, or ideas you have about looking after yourself. I'd really appreciate that. Lots of love, everybody. Thank you so much for being there for me, and I will see you soon. Bye.